Roger Stone here. Every day you wait, your money loses value, but gold and silver don't follow those same rules. American Sovereign Bullion gives you access to a nationwide wholesaler network, helping you secure aggressive pricing on real physical metals. Call 844-272-2428 now to get your free gold and silver guide to learn how to protect your wealth with physical gold and silver, delivered right to your door or with a gold IRA. Visit asbgold.com. That's asbgold.com for your free gold and silver guide today.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And I'm Jake Novak in for Roger Stone here, 8:05, almost 8:06 Eastern Time. And, I've been in the news business, TV, radio, on the internet, that kind of thing, for over 32 years. And there are times when I get so frustrated about this industry, and I start to feel like there's just not enough righteous people in it to make it deserve to continue existing. And I've been really dealing with that today because of a good thing. Folks, I know that you haven't heard this even on your right-wing media channels, and you certainly haven't heard it on your mainstream media channels, and you probably haven't heard it among your own circles. But I want everyone listening to stop what you're doing just for a second and pay very special attention to what I'm about to say. It's now been more than a week since the United States Supreme Court came down with the decision that is the most momentous and positive decision for black people in this country since at least the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And from an economic level, I absolutely believe, without hyperbole and without a stretch, the biggest thing to happen to black people in this country since the Emancipation Proclamation. This decision by the courts to not allow the districting of congressional districts based on race, which will lead to, at least this in the states that decide to do this, and this will be probably at least 30 of the 50 states, the destruction of these racially gerrymandered districts, which have been virtual economic no-go zones for the people who live in them for decades after decade. This is a huge liberation of economic power for black people in this country like we've never seen, because when the slaves were freed, they didn't have the kind of economic power they have now, potential power they have now. And of course, they were living in areas where they weren't going to be given much of a chance in the first place, even under Reconstruction. You have no idea how much economic blight has been created in these districts where not only are they guaranteed Democrat districts, don't get so caught up in this whole scoreboard between Republicans and Democrats in the House. I know it's important, and that's something for another time. But that's going to go back and forth from time to time. This is the destruction of the breaking down of the walls, the economic walls that most of the black people in this country have been living in for a very long time. And you don't have to be a black person to be excited about this, because when one group starts doing real well economically in this country, it usually trickles down and trickles sideways and trickles up. That's the way economies are, and in this country especially. But this is extremely exciting. Now, let me explain a little bit more why this is so exciting. The people who represent these racially gerrymandered districts face no accountability. They know they're going to get reelected. That's the way the district has been drawn up. You say, well, Jake, can't they be primaried? No, the DNC does not allow for people to be primary just at random. They haven't allowed an open primary process for the presidential election. You think they're going to allow it for some small district where they want to keep somebody in place? I mean, they've been willing to stretch enormously to basically rig their presidential primary systems. You don't think they can get away with it in a district that no one's paying attention to? There's no open elections in these districts. And thus, there's no incentive for the leaders of these districts to do any good by their own people. And so they don't. They don't. And the few times that well-meaning people on both sides of the aisle, I might add, have tried to work around these walled-in prisons, economic prisons, it's taken literal acts of Congress and literal federal programs to get it done, and it's only a smattering here and there. a Republican congressman at the time, and then eventually the housing secretary, and then a vice presidential candidate, and before all that, a pro football star, Jack Kemp, saw this, knew that something had to be done. He didn't have a Supreme Court decision destroying this districting stuff based on race in his pocket, but he did have the idea of enterprise zones. And a block here, a block there in some of these districts, and some of them that were not part of those kinds of districts, but just places that needed economic vitality, he helped create. He had a big ally in a guy named Charlie Rangel, who was a congressman here in New York for a long time. And yes, he was a black congressman, but no, most of the many decades that Charlie Rangel was running for the House, he was not in a racially gerrymandered district. He famously represented parts of Harlem and also parts of the Upper East Side and Queens. I mean, his district was never a majority, really just kind of black district where he could just sort of coast through. He had a mixed district most of his career. Not always, because, they keep changing things. But he understood how important this was for those other racially gerrymandered districts and also for Harlem. And a Republican, Jack Kemp, and a Democrat, Charlie Rangel, did this. But as great as that was, it was basically like a parachute-in mission, like a paratrooper mission. They had to kind of go in the middle of some of these districts, get a block or two or a couple of other areas improved economically, and then they parachuted out, and then they flew out. This will bring much more political clout to black voters across the country. Instead of being members of a foregone conclusion district where it doesn't matter whether they vote or not, suddenly a lot of them are going to become the swing voters in congressional districts. And that's when you get paid a lot of attention to. And how do you get that? How does that attention materialize? It materializes in economic attention, business opportunities. The other aspect of this is that because there's no incentive for these members of Congress in these now existing racially gerrymandered districts, they end up, when businesses do want to take a shot at doing something in those districts, they just end up shaking them down. And most of them decide not to go through with it. They don't really seem to care, because they don't have to care. They're going to get reelected anyway. Accountability, you talk about democracy and whether you get all the information for democracy to flourish. Democracy is about accountability. This is what our founding fathers dreamed of. They were dreaming of very powerful leaders, starting with the president, who they wanted to make very much like a monarch, but one with accountability. And that was true for everyone who was elected, the senators and the representatives. They wanted accountability. And we have found many, many ways, these people in power have found many, many ways to avoid real accountability for centuries, really, in many cases. If you are in a community where your leader has no accountability, you will not be served properly. And in the case of most African Americans in this country, most black people in this country live in these districts in this country. There's been a lot of upward mobility for black people. In the aggregate, percentage-wise, they're still too far down on the economic scale, and this is a big reason why. There are plenty of people in this country who are actually even poorer than black people, who do much better, and it's not because of race, and it's not because of genetics. Get your mind out of the racist gutter. It's because they don't necessarily live in these places where they're not represented by anyone who gives a damn about them, and they don't. Now, why am I so upset about this instead of just being excited? Because for the most part, I am excited. Because I think I'm going to take a guess here, I'm probably the only person in the news media who has given you this news in this way since this decision. You heard about the decision. You heard about how the left is upset because they think this is racist. You heard about how the right is excited because they think they're going to pick up some seats. That's all true. But what kind of sick, disgusting, cynical people are in my business that no one has seen this incredible emancipation in front of our eyes? This is, to me, like the freeing of the slaves from an economic standpoint. And I'm not going to use terms like master or plantation or that stuff. That's triggering stuff, and I'm not going to use it like that. I do think, though, that this is an economic emancipation we're going to see right before our eyes. As soon as these districts are chopped up, This is great news for black people. And I understand, and I'm the biggest person who explains this because this has been a big part of what I've been writing about for years. The biggest bias in the news media is not left-wing politics, although it's up there, and it's not geographic bias. You know, they care about New York and D.C. and a little bit about L.A., and they don't care about the rest. Those are very, very big biases in the news media. But the number one bias is the bias in favor of negativity, hate, pessimism. And boy, is it showing here. I think that 99% of my colleagues don't even have the ability to see the good in this. And that includes the right-wingers. That includes the Fox and the Newsmax and all those other people, because all I'm hearing from them is, well, this is going to get rid of a couple of Democrats and we're going to get 5 more seats. Okay, but you're missing the forest for the trees, my friends. Black people in this country have been held economic hostage by unaccountable members of Congress, and they get a triple whammy, folks, because their local leaders are also indemnified from any political real accountability, and their state leaders are too. And when we come back, I'm going to tell you about a state leader today in the state of Virginia who proves everything I was just telling you about, everything. And while it's something that's disappointing to hear about this person potentially doing, understand that a big part of what keeps these people in power has been removed, or at least can be removed now, once these states and once the federal government moves on this. There's a lot of reasons to be optimistic here, but I want to explain to you what evils are going to be overcome. Because something happened in the state of Virginia today, where I used to live, not close from my home, actually, from where I used to live, that I find to be very, very telling. I'm Jake Novak in for Roger Stone. This is the Stone Zone. We'll be right back.
The Marine Toys for Tots foster care program is bringing hope to children who need it most. Every 2 minutes, a child enters foster care, often with only a small bag of belongings. More than 400,000 children face trauma and uncertainty, many before age 8. This May, during Foster Care Awareness Month, Toys for Tots is creating Room for Joy. In 2025, nearly 375,000 children received comfort through toys, books, and essentials, reminding them they are not alone. Donate now and change a child's life.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And I'm Jake Novak with you. There's been a lot of late breaking news, and we're doing a live program. It feels a shame not to really hit you with a lot of the breaking news, and we're going to do that. I'm going to do that in a moment right now, because what I just was talking about in the first segment really dovetails nicely into some breaking news today out of the state of Virginia. But of course, also, we have breaking news on the U.S.-Iran war and a potential peace deal that seems to be closer and closer. And in about 20 minutes, you're going to hear from one of the most elite Israeli soldiers out there, who is now working also to change the politics in Israel. He's going to give us an update on Iran, on Lebanon, and what's going on. And Israel's having an election, by the way, in October. I know a lot of people can't believe that. They're thinking about elections now, but we'll talk to him in about 20 minutes. But I want to get into what happened in the state of Virginia today. Now, the leader of the state Senate in Virginia is a woman named Louise Lucas. She represents an area called Portsmouth, Virginia, very close to where I spent a lot of my youth in Norfolk, Virginia. Parts of Portsmouth have not changed as far as their rung on the economic ladder since I lived there 45 years ago, and probably many decades before that. Louise Lucas, yes, she is an African-American woman. Yes, she represents an area where she's never going to have to face a serious election challenge, and she never has. And today the FBI raided her offices, her district offices, and raided a pot dispensary, which she's one of the owners of, right near that office. And we'll find out some of the specific charges. This is what we're understanding now. This is a corruption probe, a potential bribery probe. But wait, let's just wait a minute here. Wait a minute. She represents a district which has been economically depressed forever. And I talked about one of the big reasons for that just a moment ago. You have unaccountable elected leaders for both Congress, for 3 areas: state, local, and federal, to the Congress in those areas. And so they're not going to do anything to help the economic development of that area. But here we have a return to feudalism. Remember feudalism? I hope you learned about it in high school, where the lords not only were the kind of the political power in a part of Europe, but they also were the economic, they owned everything. And here you have Louise Lucas, modern day feudal baron. She's not a lot of business going on in Portsmouth, not anywhere near as much as there should be. But one of the businesses they do have is one of these legalized pot dispensaries. And by the way, Virginia is very close. It's a few weeks away or months away from going full on legalization for adults. So big money here. And she's going to own, what a coincidence. She owns one of these businesses. By the way, is that a business that's going to help other businesses? Is it like construction or a tech center? No, it's going to help people get stoned. Now, I'm not a prude. Do I think we should criminalize all marijuana and put everyone in jail like Nelson Rockefeller? No. But here's a perfect example of one of the problems we have in America. Overnight in America, it feels like, the government's gone from narcs, because the government used to be all about putting everybody away for pot and other drugs. They've gone from narcs overnight. Now they're the pushers. Legalized now, but they're the pushers. And you know what I don't like about that? Not the fact that it's been legalized, because I understand people are going to use this, but the fact that my tax money, and in this case in Virginia, our elected leaders are being used to promote it. And it's not just going to be promoted for adults. This kind of stuff gets to the kids and gets to people who really should not be smoking pot like ever. Pot is a great way to keep poor people poor, to keep other people kind of where they are. Some of the biggest proponents of legalized pot are these billionaires who don't have to worry about it. They're fine. Again, I'm not a prude. Legalize it, fine. Or at least decriminalize it. Stop wasting time going after possession and things like that. But does my tax money have to be used for dispensaries and for the advertising of it? And what about all the other DUIs we're going to have? And what about the people who are just never going to develop now because they have an easy pathway to getting stoned all the time? Louise Lucas, she'll get her day in court. But even if she's not found guilty of any specific crimes, I think it's a crime against humanity that she owns a pot dispensary in the district where she's the state senator, where she's the state leader and can vote on the laws to either make these places legal or not. I mean, this is really like running all parts of the casino. She's got the ticket. She's got the parking concession. She's got the slots. She also owns the horses in the horse race. She manages the boxers in the ring. She owns the sports team. I mean, this is ridiculous. It's a return to feudalism. One of the greatest crimes against just language in America is how the left likes to be known as progressives. They're not progressive. They're regressive. Communism is a very old idea, most notably from the 18th century, and it stinks. It's failed everywhere. Feudalism stinks. Feudalism is really, really bad for the general economic development of a place, and this is where they're going for. But again, let's be optimistic. If we get this redistricting because of this court decision, and I think a lot of states are going to do it, this will be the biggest economic freedom for black people in this country since the Emancipation Proclamation. Fight me on it. We'll be right back.
The Stone Zone. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And I'm Jake Novak in for Roger Stone this evening, Wednesday evening, here in America. I wanted to, again, remind you that we still have so much developing breaking news in this country. I told you about that raid on the state senator's office in Virginia, which was a big story today. And it's developing because we don't really have any specific charges and things like that yet. So that'll be very interesting. This is not just a random state senator. She's the majority leader. She's the state leader in the Senate there in Virginia, a very powerful woman. So there's that. Also, just a lot of positive news, at least for people who want to see a complete end to things going on between the U.S. and Iran. I mean, a lot of us are concerned that Iran will be left standing, this regime will be left standing, and then we'll just have to deal with them again later. But for those of you who want a peace deal and have this thing ended, President Trump's talking more and more optimistically about a deal. The markets, the people with skin in the game, rallied pretty strongly today. But I want to remind everybody that we deal with percentages when it comes to Wall Street. And while it looks great to see a 600-point gain for the Dow and nice rallies for some of these other indices, the fact is it was not a massive rally. This was actually a cautiously optimistic rally today, as there was yesterday. Oh, and by the way, there was also a lot of corporate earnings news. Now, look, there's a big argument that people are having, and of course the Democrats are pushing this argument that we are in a recession. We're not. Is it a great time for everybody? No, I don't think we're in a boom time for the consumers in this country in a way that I'd like to see, because there's still too much enduring inflation. and employment, while certainly not taking the hit that everyone was predicting, is not taking off either. It's not dead, and we're certainly not losing jobs, at least not consistently. That said, the corporations are making a lot of money. I mean, the profits that they're pulling down now are really incredible, especially in the chip sector because of AI, and that's what really pushed the markets a lot higher today, in addition to the optimism about the war ending and oil prices coming down. But this is not a recession, folks. I'm not saying it's a boom, and I'm not saying everyone's doing great. But, I mean, listen, can we not be ridiculous here? It's not a recession. Hopefully, what's going on for these corporations right now will start to trickle down to the rest of us with jobs and other things like that. And we got to get inflation under control, which certainly getting oil back down will have a lot to do with it. But we also had some interesting developments on two, what I would say actually are local or state stories today. And I think one of them is very, very important, especially, again, because I talk so much about the news media. Look, folks, you work in the news media for 30 plus years, in my case, 32 years like me. And there's a lot to talk about from the news media. First and foremost, want to mention, of course, today, this morning, we learned that Ted Turner, the founder of CNN and TBS and the former owner of the Atlanta Braves and the guy who pretty much brought the 96 Summer Olympics to Atlanta, he passed away at the age of 87 today. You know, when he first died, I thought to myself, boy, a lot of people in America under age 30 really don't know who Ted Turner was, and they certainly don't know how big a figure he was in America. But I have to amend that statement. It's more like Americans under 40. Pretty much no one under 40 really knows who he is or certainly remembers how influential he was. I mean, he was like Rupert Murdoch. I can't think of any other, all these other media types, owners types, all wrapped into one. And he brought the idea of cable television in the way that you needed to watch it every day, whether it was to see the Braves every day. That was a big part of his business. Or then CNN, which launched in June of 1980. And to say that Ted Turner and CNN blew it is a little bit of a simplification. I was at CNN when they started to blow it. It wasn't because of me, I promise. I started there in the year 2000. They had already started that descent at that point, although they were still number one at the time. But they had been bought out by Time Warner. So by that point in 1996, a big merger there. And Ted started to lose his influence because of that, as all things happen when you get a corporate owner like that, a bigger corporate owner. And they didn't improve in the face of competition. They should have. And they tried for too long just to stay the way they were when Fox started to finally gain on them. The first few years of Fox, which launched in 1996, the network was not good. It wasn't really gaining any traction on TV. And it wasn't until about late 99, early 2000 that Fox started to gain traction and CNN didn't improve itself accordingly. But an interesting character. But another story that I think really does involve the news media in a way you may not realize is this group CAIR, C-A-I-R. And I know you hear about them a lot if you listen to the Mark Levin show, and it's important to learn about them. Council of American Islamic Relations. It has many connections to Hamas. It's basically a pro-terror group. It is a viciously anti-Semitic group, but it has tremendous influence, especially in the newsroom. Speaking of CNN, that's where I first learned about CAIR. I was working at CNN, and shortly after 9/11, CAIR started sending everybody at CNN, I don't know how they got everybody's email, started sending us daily emails with their bullet points. And those bullet points started to get on the air because some of the producers and on-air people were just that lazy enough to just kind of use let's get their voices in here. Well, there's been a leader in this country, a political leader in Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, who has a mixed record. I know there's a lot of people listening who don't like Greg Abbott, even though you're conservatives and Republicans. You don't think he's been enough of a supporter of Trump or those kinds of things, but he's been on fire lately. And a while back, he declared CAIR a pro-terrorist group, knowing that they were going to sue him and the state for this, and knowing that if they sued him, he would have the right of discovery. In other words, he said, listen, we need to see all of your financial records, specific financial records, much more specific than you usually file with the government, so that, you can prove that you're not connected to terrorists. And according to Governor Abbott, he just put this out a couple of hours ago on his X feed. That's exactly what's happened now. The federal court has granted his request for all of those specific financial records, and they're going to find some ugly stuff, folks. You got to think twice when you decide to take the people to court, because stuff becomes public when you do that. You know, before the internet took away what was left of American privacy in this country and technology, the three ways you could lose your privacy in this country was to sue someone or get involved in a lawsuit, go to a hospital, or divorce proceedings. I was working at a think tank called the Woodrow Wilson Center for Scholars back in 1993. This is a think tank in D.C. It's actually taxpayer funded. You pay for this thing. So it's supposed to be middle of the road. And back when I was there were some conservatives there, you know, not many, but there were some. So I guess they were sort of working on it a little bit. And I forget his name, but one of the scholars there was an expert on privacy. And he was bemoaning the fact that privacy was starting to get eroded in America. Boy, if he's still alive, he must really have just thrown in the towel. But was he right about privacy going into the dumpster? Now, the other local, state, kind of in this case a city story, is this ongoing battle involving Ken Griffin. He's the biggest hedge fund guy in the country. Okay, Citadel is the biggest hedge fund. Ken Griffin is a huge success, multi-billionaire. As you know, a few weeks ago, Mayor Mamdani made a video that he posted on social media right at the base, at the ground level below his penthouse, mentioned Griffin by name and talked about how great it was that he's going to be taxing him more. Although actually that has not been completely solidified yet. And it was a creepy video, something Ken Griffin mentioned, used that exact word. I thought the same thing too. It looked creepy. You know, here's a pro tip. If you're an elected leader in this country, do not demonize any individual citizen unless they've been convicted of a felony. Period. And if the person hasn't committed any crime, why are you singling out an individual private citizen? You can say, I don't like what his company is doing, but why would you say that? Why would you call this person? You know, why would you do this? It's scary. And it was only, as Ken Griffin noted yesterday, that video was taken just steps away from where Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, was gunned down in December of 2024. This isn't just like empty stuff. This gives people beliefs that they'll get away with violence against folks when they see stuff like this. So the latest we're hearing now is that Griffin is going to feel much more comfortable about moving more of his business and his money to Miami, taking jobs and tax money from New York. You know, there's something that you buy in New York, whether it's a penthouse or a stick of gum, that doesn't come with a tax revenue with it as well. And he's going to take that money off the table here in New York and potentially a lot of jobs as well. And there's something else that Griffin mentioned yesterday that really resonated with me and hopefully resonates with you as well. He talked about education. You know, I talked about the racism in this country. Remember Eric Holder when he was Attorney General and said we have to have a conversation about racism in America? I would love to have a conversation with Eric Holder about racism in America, although I think he wanted a soliloquy, a monologue. I don't think he wants to actually have a conversation because I will tell you, we have systemic racism primarily against black people in this country in two main systemic areas. One is the thing I talked about at the top of the hour. These racially gerrymandered districts where the people who are responsible for them know that they are throwing the black people who live in those districts into an economic prison. And they don't care because they would much rather have their vote and their guaranteed guy in Congress or gal in Congress than to give people their full civil rights. And economic rights are civil rights. And the other systemic racism in America is the public education system, where we've allowed poor performing public school districts, especially in these same black districts, to continue on and on and on because we'd rather get the teachers' unions' money and their vote than do right by the civil rights of the children in these schools generation after generation. Yes, that's systemic racism, Eric Holder and everybody else. And you could say, well, what does it matter? Jake Novak's a white guy. We need to hear from only black people. No, if you're going to have a conversation about racism, my and other white people, although I'm not technically white, that's another story. I don't really believe in race, so I don't really care what you think I am. But I'm not an African American. I'm not black, okay? Let's just say that, okay? If you're going to have a conversation about race, then my impressions of black people and my beliefs about them, you have to hear about them. They could be wrong, they could be right. That's what a conversation's all about. Well, here it is, Eric Holder. I see two systemic racist things in this country which couldn't be more harmful. I mean, the only thing that could be more harmful, God forbid, is if we put black people in concentration camps. But to take away their economic freedom with these gerrymandered districts and to take away the educational rights with these school districts that are poorly performing because we care more about this teachers unions and the 99.9% of their money that they donate to Democrats and the 100% of the time that they vote for Democrats. That's terrible racism. And it doesn't matter who's conducting it just because it might be a lot of black people in government who are doing it. It doesn't matter. It's still racism. And Ken Griffin talks about the lack of education quality in two of the cities where he's had businesses, Chicago and New York, and how that is a huge problem for him as well. And Florida, which used to, in my opinion, used to be the laughingstock of public education in this country, there's undeniably improving. There are so many better public school districts in Florida now than there used to be. That's a train I want to get on. And you can understand why Ken Griffin wants to do that. All right. When we come back, we're going to talk to one of the elite soldiers in the Israeli Defense Forces who's now trying to make some political change in Israel. We're going to ask him about the breaking news about Iran and what's going on in Lebanon, too. He certainly knows about that kind of stuff. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
The Stone Zone. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And I'm Jake Novak filling in for Roger Stone. Let's get to the Middle East right now because we're on pins and needles about whether we might get a peace deal to end the war in Iran for real, not just a ceasefire. On the phone with us right now, Lieutenant Colonel Eliav Dickstein. He is from a Special Forces Commander Unit, the Duvdevan Unit, and he's also the chairman of a new political party in Israel, the Zionist Majority Movement. Colonel Dickstein, first of all, I got to ask you, what do you think? You think this actual deal might go through? I mean, it's a big question. Are we going to pack up and take our weapons home here in the United States? What are we doing? Hold on. We might have lost him. Oh, he dropped. All right. Well, I wanted to give people a little bit of an update. We'll get his opinion in just a second. But, folks, just so you know, all throughout the day, President Trump has been making statements that are relatively optimistic, some cases very optimistic, about a possible deal to end the war between the U.S. and Iran. And if that's the case, you can expect oil prices to continue to go down. We're touching at the mid-90s a barrel right now. Markets went up today, although not huge on a percentage basis. And let's see if we have him back. We have him back? Yes. All right. Sorry, we got cut off there. Tell us, do you think this deal is going to happen?
Listen, hi.
Hi. Gotcha.
I think that we need to concentrate on the main things. The main things is the strong leader like Trump going to really make a different change. It doesn't matter if it's going to be through negotiate or through a strong war to continue to war, but he has to make a real change. It means that the nuclear weapon issue, the missiles, and the proxies in the Middle East. All this stuff, we have to understand that on this case, Trump is a leader not only for the American nation, is a leader for all the free world. And he has commitment to Trump has commitment to his legacy, to his history, to the next generation. And Trump is a strong leader, and he serves not only the American nation, he serves all the free world. And you can't now compromise with some small negotiation solution. You have to take it to a real solution that you check it and test it in the reality if it's really make our world better. And this is the main question that we need to ask. And through this question, we need to check all the results of the negotiate. Okay? And so this is my perspective in a brief. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think there's a lot of moving parts here, but I don't believe that President Trump will be taking a weak result. I mean, whether this is coming from a war or from a negotiating thing, I just don't think that he's feeling the pressure that other presidents would feel. He's not caring about the polls. He's trying to do the right thing. And everyone should hold off on guessing what they think is going to happen until we see what happens and then react accordingly.
I agree about that 100%. Yeah. Trump is a strong leader, and the most commitment that he have now, it's more than the middle election, he have more commitment to his legacy and to the history and to the next generation. This is what I think.
Yeah. I only have about 3.5 minutes left. We ran a little bit long on something. So I want to switch right now to the political situation in Israel because elections are coming up in October. And I know a lot of people here in the United States, even those who support Israel or people who are crazy, obsessed with Israel, probably haven't been paying attention to the many political developments there. It feels like every one of the other parties, other than Netanyahu's party, has started to basically coalesce against him. And it doesn't look good for him in October, just based on the numbers. The former, very brief Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett, is kind of leading the efforts to defeat Netanyahu. Where do you and your new party stand? And what do you think is going to happen?
Okay, it's a good question, but I prefer not to deal about I would say, small politics games.
Okay.
I will tell you what, the national needs of Israel is very clear. Israel needs a broad government. This is what we really need. That not depend on the ultra-Orthodox and not depend, of course, on the Arabs. Okay? And if Bibi will elected, so will Bibi establish the new government. And if someone else. But probably it's going to be the right wing going to win. But even that, the attitude, it needs to come from perspective to unite the nation. To unite the nation, especially after the October 7, etc., it's to establish a broad government. This is the best Zionism steps for Israel to stability and to unite our nation. We have a lot of problems and create around us in the Middle East. So at least we need to be united.
You know, I'm talking to Eliav Dickstein, and Eliav is a lieutenant colonel now in the reserves in the IDF. And I only have about a minute left, but, I have to say this because I've been very, very closely following Israel's culture, history, and politics for my entire life. And it really feels like when it comes to the actual issues, Eliav, I've never seen more unity among the Israeli people. It's just the individual politicians. They are so polarizing. Netanyahu, just like Trump here in the United States, polarizes a lot of people. I only have 10 seconds left, but do you agree? The issues, there's been a lot of agreement.
I agree with you 100%, and this is the difference between small politicians to be a big leadership that really think about the nation, that really comes and brings some add value. It's a big difference to be a big
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here? Oh, it's out of here. Home run Ferry Hawks.
Get ready, Staten Island. It's time to celebrate 5 years of Ferry Hawks baseball. Come out to the ballpark this week as the Ferry Hawks welcome in the Charleston Dirty Birds May 5th through the 10th. Grab the kids and come on out. We kick it off on Tuesday, May 5th with Cinco de Baseball with $5 tickets and $5 food and beverage specials. And we end the week as we celebrate all moms on Mother's Day. Moms get in free. Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats.